Hey, happy Friday, everybody. My name is Mark Medeiros, and I'm the Senior Manager of Community Engagement at Peninsula Open Space Trust. Welcome to today's program called Snowy Plovers, the Cutest Birds on the Beach, which we are hosting in partnership with San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory. Before anything, I'd like to acknowledge the Native people whose lands we are on today. I'm here in the South Bay, and for that reason, I'd like to acknowledge the Amamutsun tribal band and the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, whose territories are nearest to post-working area. Wherever you are, please pause and acknowledge the Native people whose land you are on. And then think about how you could support them directly in the goals and causes that they have today. So quickly about POST. Peninsula Open Space Trust has been around since 1977. We have protected over 80,000 acres of land in that time. And most of that land is now part of local and regional parks in San Mateo, Santa Clara, and northern Santa Cruz counties. Of course, this is thanks to all of our wonderful donors who have been supporting us along the way. It's very much thanks to all of you that this work is possible. Thank you. We know many of you have made donations for the end of the year, and we appreciate you so much for doing that. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and what I'd like to share next is a picture here of Tunitas Creek Beach. We're going to be talking about snowy plovers today. So we wanted to provide you one example of how POST has worked to protect areas of snowy plover habitat. So at the end of 2017, POST purchased 58 acres of Tunitas Creek Beach on the San Mateo coast, and we then transferred the property to San Mateo County Parks, which is working to open it as a public beach. A community input and planning process is underway to figure out how we're gonna open up this beach to the public, keeping the needs of snowy plovers in mind, as well as the diverse Bay Area residents who we hope can enjoy this beach very much. So we'll share a little bit more about snowy plovers at Tunitas Creek Beach, as well as planning efforts later in the program. Next, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Her name is Jessica González, and she is a San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory biologist. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Environmental Studies with a concentration in Environmental Restoration and Resource Management from San Jose State University. She is currently pursuing a Master's of Science degree in Environmental Studies at San Jose State, looking at how predation affects breeding snowy plovers, and is surveying for threatened western snowy plovers who breed in salt pond habitats in the Bay Area. So again, we'd like to thank our co-host for the program, San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory. SFBBO is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the conservation of birds and their habitats through science and outreach. San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory engages hundreds of volunteers each year in citizen science opportunities that increase their investment in this work. And that's one of my favorite aspects of SFBBO is this outreach work and citizen science. POST has been proud to partner with SFBBO on some Bear Island restoration work days out at Bear Island, which is also POST protected, and we look forward to being able to resume those once COVID is under control. So through environmental education and outreach activities, SFBBO connects people to the birds in their neighborhoods and helps instill in the public a desire to protect wild animals and wild spaces. Birds are an excellent indicator of ecosystem health, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important to do research on them. They're cost effective to track and are very sensitive to environmental change. So we encourage you to visit sfbbo.org. Again, a nonprofit supported by donors. So with that, I'd like to welcome Jessica to the program. Hey, how's it going, Jessica?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. I see your cat back there.
Yep, she might crash the party. She's been a little bit vocal, but I can't really
cool.
even talk.
We like animals around here. Yeah, so thank you for joining us today, and thanks for your work at San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory. I've been following your Snowy Plover work for a while, and before we get started, I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your background, how you came to this work with Snowy Plovers. I'll mention we're both proud De Anza and San Jose State alumni.
We are, yeah. So I'll kind of go into it in my presentation, but yeah, I just got lucky. And of course, as they took over my life. Plovers are my life now. But yeah, I just got introduced to them in my undergraduate work at San Jose State. And then from there, I was just hooked. And I've been working with animals that live here in the Bay Area. And plovers are basically one of my favorite species I get to work with.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to learn about snowy plovers from you. And I know you have a lot to cover. To the audience, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I see a lot of you are commenting already. And we'll have time for some questions for Jessica at the end. So keep any questions in mind and feel free to post them at any time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jessica.
All right. All right. So welcome. So I'll be talking about snowy plovers. They are the cutest birds on the beach. And additionally, I like to add salt ponds. So even though they're mainly found on coastal habitats, they also are the cutest birds around at salt ponds. So again, I am Jessica González. I am a snowy plover biologist at San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory. And just a quick little background about me. I started with SFBBO as a snowy plover intern in 2011, doing undergraduate work at San Jose State. Since then, I've had 6 field seasons working as a plover biologist with SFBBO in aiding them in their recovery of snowy plovers in the San Francisco Bay. SFBBO, as Mark mentioned, is a nonprofit based in Milpitas that focuses on the conservation of birds and habitats, both through science and outreach. And they've been around almost 40 years, and they've done some great work in conservation science that has provided invaluable data in the conservation of Bay Area ecosystems and for endangered and insensitive species like the snowy plover. But at the same time, they're engaging and inspiring members of the community to appreciate, understand, and really know the power of science and how that is necessary to protect species and habitats here in the Bay Area. So let's get down to it. Western snowy plover is Shoreline nivosus. They are a small ground nesting shorebird. They're about 6 inches. So if you have a can of soda, can of beer, that's basically what their size is. They're about 6 inches. They weigh about 35 to 58 grams. So if you have quarters, which I know are kind of in short supply right now, but if you have 6 to 10 quarters, that's pretty much how much a snowy plover weighs. They have a thin, dark bill. They have a sandy kind of brown upper part that they have. They have a white color belly, dark patches here in the collar, and kind of have like a little unibrow going on. They have a white forehead and then the supercilium, or the eyebrow if you want to be nice. Their average lifespan is about 3 years, and their cryptic sandy coloration is basically what they need in order to blend with their environment. That's why sometimes they are super difficult to see out in the wild. So adults, the difference between adults during the breeding season is that the males kind of have that collar, and the supercilium is a lot darker than the females. Females, it kind of varies, but technically they don't really have too much going on. The non-breeding markings are actually absent. You can't really tell them apart. So during the non-breeding season, if you see plovers, it's really hard to distinguish them between male and female. During the breeding season, you can definitely tell them apart. And again, their sandy coloration that they have is absolutely needed for them to kind of blend in with their environment. Snowy plover habitat. So as I mentioned earlier, you guys mostly know them for finding them in coastal habitats, coastal sandy beaches, sand dunes, river flats, sand flats. But at the same time, throughout here in California, in the Bay Area, we actually find them in salt pond habitat in the South Bay. They have decided that they like salt pond habitat because it kind of mimics the same requirements that they need in coastal sandy beaches. The cryptic coloration works. They can blend in, lots of habitat, and the same thing. Their habitat features are kind of the same. And the The western coast population is found all the way from Washington all the way to Baja California. So we find them all throughout the coast. And again, salt ponds kind of resemble beaches where there's kind of minimal vegetation and kind of areas that they can hide in. So their diet, what does it consist of? Within coastal habitats, they forage for food between the kelp. They eat tiny insects such as vertebrate, invertebrate sand crabs, sand fleas, other things that you might find within the kelp. And again, kelp is kind of one of those important things that they need because that's where all the critters that they need to eat hang out. So if you kind of see that, leave it be. And then for an essay salt pond habitat, they kind of eat similar invertebrates, brine flies, beetles, moths, caterpillars, and other invertebrates that they might find there. And then kind of give you an idea of what they do is that when you see a plover foraging, they kind of do this thing where they run really fast, stop, peck, peck, run really fast. So it's kind of really intense what they're doing. So I have a little video for you guys to see. Yeah, so you kind of see them just going peck, 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 run, peck, 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 run. Yeah. As you can see, it's foraging throughout the kelp. That's where all the yummy critters are hanging out in. All right, so their range. So where are plovers found? As you can see, we have our Pacific Coast population of western snowy plovers. So that's where we're at, between Washington all the way to Baja California. And additionally, there's also an interior population of plovers. They are different. They're not endangered as our listed Pacific Coast snowy plovers, but they also kind of do intermingle. We have the Cuban snowy plover that you kind of find within the Gulf range. So plover migration. So our birds, they tend to stay within our range. They don't really travel much. They might go north or south for the winter, but they kind of still stay within the coastal areas. The interior population plovers actually might come down to where our plovers are hanging out. So they kind of intermingle during the non-breeding season. And for example, so yeah, they remain in the same areas year round. And then in Monterey, they kind of, from studies shown that there's a percentage of 41% of males and 24% of females that are actual annual residents. So they stick around. And then also during the non-breeding season, plovers tend to flock together. So they like to hang out with their kind. So in the beaches, you might see one, but in reality, you might be seeing several other ones. So there's always a whole bunch. Again, they're really, really hard to see. And one cool fact is that, during the non-breeding season, they love to hang out with one another, but kind of in the breeding season, they're just kind of like, hey, I don't want to be near you. So life history, the breeding season. So the breeding season occurs from March to September. Adults share incubation duties. Females will incubate during the day. So as you can see, here's our female. And then at night, males typically are the ones incubating. They have a polyandrous mating system where the female will actually breed and have different nests throughout the season. So she might have up to 3 nesting males that she'll be with during the year. So at the beginning of the season, typically she'll have her favorite kind of bird that she might mate with every other year. And then after that, she kind of might, mate with someone that's new, different. So yeah, they mate 3 times throughout the year, typically. And then one of the things is that the reason why they have the polyandrous system is that the female, as soon as the chicks hatch, she goes away. She goes on, she finds another mate, another opportunity to nest. And the males are the ones that are raising the chicks. Typically, females might actually help raise the chicks once they have they breed with like the last male of the season. That's when you can typically see females and males kind of helping raise the chicks. All right, so nesting occurs from March through September. They have about 1 to 3 egg clutch. The eggs are small. They're cream colored with black speckles. Males make a scrape on the ground. It's lined with debris. Typically, you can see shells, little pieces of algae, kelp, things like that. So they actually line their nest with debris. And males and females will incubate the eggs for about 26 to 31 days. So, one of the things that's cool about nests is that each one is very different from the other. So you can see that they kind of get creative with where they're at in their surroundings. So typically you can see them nesting along, oyster shells, sandy, a little bit of vegetation. And then, there's the occasional nest that we find in the season that's kind of morbid, as you can see in the bottom corner. There's actually bones kind of lining around it. But yeah, typically nests, they rely on these things to kind of increase their camouflage. They don't really want predators or other things to kind of get to the nest. So they kind of rely on these things that are unique within their habitat to put their nest in there. So here we go. So again, really hard to see nests, but at the same time, if you do get close to a nest, for example, myself going out to actually do a nest check, I had a male who basically did his only defense mechanism that he has to lure me away from the nest. I'll put the video on. So here we go. It's doing a broken wing display, where it basically uses that in order to attempt to lure me away from its chicks in its nest. So if you see an adult doing that, that's typically your warning of saying, hey, there's young, you need to get out. And then, that's typically their only defense mechanism. So it's not like they're going to come at you, peck at you. They're just going to try and get you to go away. All right, life history, raising their young. So again, hatching occurs in the months of April through August. The males are the ones that are raising the chicks, so they will help have the young find food. So as soon as chicks hatch, they're actually precocial. They're on the move. They do not stay where the nest is. So the males are constantly moving around the areas that they're in to help the chicks find food. So the males are taking care of the young until the chicks fledge. So when the chick is able to fly, that's when their muscles are ready for them to fly. And fledgling occurs between 28 to 33 days. So chicks, they are precocial, so they're on the move as soon as within a couple hours that they hatch. Again, they camouflage. That's one thing that plovers rely on. They have to camouflage with their environment. They're really hard to see. They are literally, when they first hatch, they're like cotton balls. They're the size of a thumb, and they weigh 7 grams. So if you have a quarter, that's pretty much what a plover weighs. It's almost, you can't feel them in your hands. It's ridiculous how cute they are too. So as they grow, their behavior changes. So within 0 hours or about like a week, they're very small. They're round in appearance. They're like a cotton ball that's running around with toothpicks. Their movement is very uncoordinated. They're very flimsy. They fall all over, and they require constant broodance. So they brood underneath the male to keep warm. They can't really regulate their heat quite yet, and they're very reliant on the male. They, if they're separated at that point, a chick is in danger. And then, they're kind of cute, fluffy 1 to 3 days. And then as they get a little bit older, they get a little more fluffier. At 2 weeks, their body's a little bit more, their body is a little bit elongated, gangly. They kind of go into this weird, awkward stage. Their movement is more deliberate. They require less brooding, but they still kind of rely on the adults to be nearby for, heat regulation. At 3 weeks, their body is a lot larger, more substantial. Feathers are more prominent, and the coloration is a little bit messy, but at the same time, they're starting to look more like the adults, but they're still in that kind of awkward stage. So at 4 weeks, they're considered fledged once they are capable of flight between 28 to 31 days. They're more round. They start to look more like the adult. They kind of look like an adult, but they kind of don't have that, like the feathers are, they kind of like a little blunt butt. It's really weird. But yeah, at that point, they're capable of being very self-reliant on their own. And then they reach a fledgling. They're basically a little adult. And again, throughout all of the stages that they have in growing up, they really still rely on blending in with their environment. And then you might be thinking, well, why are these guys endangered? I'll let you know. So threats and reasons for decline, basically raptors, mammals, corvids, gulls, corvids include American crows, ravens, feral cats, skunks, anything that lives out in the wild. So there are many threats to snowy plovers. It doesn't just include plovers itself. It includes their nests, the chicks, everything. So one of the things that's occurring is that the ecosystem's kind of out of balance. So a lot of these predators their populations are increasing and they're inflated. And then because these habitats are near urban environments, it really supports these opportunistic feeders. And the increased predation pressure that's occurring is one of the biggest problems for plovers here, especially in the South Bay, and I could say that for other areas that have plovers. It's just an issue that's one of the biggest fights that they have. So how do they avoid predators? Again, their camouflage. That's really what they rely on so that they're not seen. Safety in numbers, especially during the non-breeding season. They rely on kind of gathering all together to really just protect themselves. And then distractions, like I showed you guys earlier, the broken wing display to really lure any predators away from the nest. And again, and then one, I've never seen this happen, but they can also do like a fake nest sitting where they, you know, if they see a predator coming, they'll pretend to be sitting on a nest to make sure that they're nowhere near their actual nest. So reasons for disturbance, a reason for decline, excuse me, disturbance. So this is where humans kind of come along. So habitat loss, you know, coexistence with plovers along beaches for recreational use, human disturbance, dogs, unfortunately. So a lot of these things have to do with, you know, using outdoors and recreation. And at the same time, there's habitat loss. You know, there's a lot of areas that, you know, plovers rely on for breeding, but at the same time, they just don't have access to that anymore. And of course, you know, beaches are desirable locations for humans. Hey, don't get me wrong. I love going to the beach too, but it's one of those things that we need to learn how to share space with plovers and other wildlife. And then of course, you know, one of the biggest things is that plovers, even if it's a human, a person, a dog, they will perceive it as a threat. And unfortunately, sometimes, you know, unleashed dogs can wreak havoc to plovers, their chicks, and their nests. And sometimes, unfortunately, this is what happens. Chicks get trampled on, and there's a high mortality rate for them, especially once that time of year where people are out on the beach more using, you know, during Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July. This is where plovers are endangered the most. Other reasons for decline, habitat loss, there is invasive plants, the European beach grass that is starting to pop up on different beaches that just kind of chokes habitat for plovers, and they really don't like nesting in the area. They need to nest in areas that has sparse vegetation. Climate change, plovers already have very little habitat when they have to, you know, compete with human recreation. And then with climate change, that's just really going to exacerbate that, where they're just going to have less and less space. And at that point, they're just going to have to start breeding in areas with high density nesting. And that's really not what plovers need. So their legal status, they are protected. They are federally threatened under the Endangered Species Act. They were listed in 1993. So one of the things is that they have been listed for quite some time. And recently, a couple years ago, they actually tried to delist the plover, but after just kind of seeing how plovers were doing in 2006, it was determined that the Pacific Coast population of Western Snowy Plovers still remained at risk because of habitat loss, human disturbance, and other perils. So they basically retained their status. They're still very much endangered, and it's just a matter of hopefully they'll bounce back eventually. So range-wide recovery and SFBBO work with plovers. So one of the things is that there are several different state, federal, and local organizations that are working really hard to help in the recovery efforts for snowy plovers. So like I mentioned earlier, plovers are from Washington all the way to Southern California. And within that, there are recovery units for each of the areas that focus on aiding plovers in their recovery. So one of the things is that here in the Bay Area, the area that I'm working in with SFBBO, we are Recovery Unit 3. So that's SFBBO. And the areas that we are working in are Eden Landing Ecological Reserve, Don Edwards San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge. Oop, let me go back. So those are the areas that we're working in. And a lot of people are doing some incredible work researching plovers, monitoring them yearly during their breeding season while they're wintering. And all this is very collaborative because at the end of the year, we all get together and we basically say, hey, this is what plovers, this is how our year went with plovers. How's your year? And at that point, we're figuring out what the best way to help protect these plovers. And, you know, at the same time we're monitoring their habitat, we want to make sure that they have the adequate habitat for the protection. We want to make sure that, you know, we study how potentially recreation is impacting the breeding on plovers, predator management, as I mentioned, especially in the South Bay. Predators are basically the main reason why plovers are declining in numbers. And then also we want to make sure that they have proper areas, especially in the South Bay, salt pond habitat. We want to enhance it so that they actually continue to be in this area. And then one of the things is that the goal for plovers throughout all the ranges is 3,000 plovers. Here in the Bay Area, it's 500. So we all have different kind of recovery goals that we need to make in order for the plovers to be delisted. You know, at this point, we're not quite there yet. So the range-wide population right now, based on annual surveys through all the collaborative effort from everyone, from Washington down to Baja California, is estimated to be at 2,375. And as I mentioned, you know, the range-wide recovery goal for all units is about 3,000 breeding birds. As you can see, there's an upward trend. They're doing okay, but at the same time, at the local recovery units, there's a lot of things that, you know, plovers have to deal with. Wintering plovers in the Bay Area. So as you can see, it kind of is a general upward trend. They're doing well. As you can see, in 2006, there was a low of 65 plovers. In 2016, 391. You know, at the same time, the wintering plovers is just you know, it's a survey, but it doesn't accurately depict on how birds are doing because, as I mentioned earlier, interior populations come in to coastal areas, so they're kind of intermingling. So it's really hard to really know which Pacific plovers are actually here. So it's just an idea of how they're doing, but really, it's just you know, it helps to a certain extent. So breeding plovers in SF Bay. So this is based on surveys that we do in May of each year. You know, plovers here in the Bay Area, as I mentioned, they have years where they fluctuate, where they're doing really great, where they're not doing so great. So it's just one of those things that, you know, there's a lot of work ahead for us to help plovers here in the SF Bay. So again, the recovery goal for plovers here in San Francisco or SF Bay area, RU3, is 500 breeding birds. So as you can see, we got not close, but we did well in like 2010 with 275, but we still have a long way to go. So Snowy Plover breeding in SFA. So this is only data for within the SFBBO of the breeding season in 2009. So as you can see, we had about 276 nests that we monitored. About 42% hatched, 49% were depredated. So that's as you can see, coloration depredations by predators is a very big factor in plovers. Abandonment, about 3%. Failed to hatch one. Unknown and flooded, you know, pretty small, but at the same time, you know, it's just, as you can see, plovers are having a tough time because for us, predators are the main issue for us here in RU3. So one of the things that we do in order to keep track of our plovers here in our unit is we band them. So plovers are banded with these colored Darvik fans that are used to assist biologists. So it's not only us that do it, everyone between Washington, Baja California, and I know our cohorts in Mexico also do this to better understand where plovers are breeding and where they're wintering. So this unique color combination tells a biologist exactly where a bird was born, what its age is, and what other vital information it has. So if you see these color combinations, kind of the colors that you have, what you want to do if you see a banded plover is you want to report it, and here's the email SF or SNIPPLE. It's the abbreviation, snipple_band_reporting@googlegroups.com. So if you see a banded plover, you want to give them a date, the location of where it's found. You know, you want to let them know if the bird was alive or potentially deceased. So all that information is vital because we need that data in order to know what's going on with our plovers. So as I said, we ban plovers at SFBBO. So for example, we mainly just ban chicks. Adults are banded occasionally, but at the same time, it's a little bit more work to do them. So what happens is that the chicks and the adults receive a band on each leg. They get a specific number, a metal service band that has a unique identifier, so we know exactly where this bird came from, and the unique color patterns to that bird. So what happens is that we put these Darvik bands on their legs, and then from there, we use a soldering iron to kind of close them to make sure they're secure. After that, we add the corresponding tape over them, and then we solder it on there. So as you can see, the little plover chick has these color combinations, and it's just to make sure that they're extra secure so it stays on through its entire lifespan. And then the color combo is red, left top bottom to right top bottom. So this chick, for example, is white, brown, red, red. So that's how you read it. And then one cool thing is that in this year, actually, we banded over 85 chicks. And then out of those, we had 23 of them fledged. So we were actually able to keep track of them because they had these unique color combinations. So we were actually able to keep track of them. So it's really exciting to know that, 23 of them actually reached to become little mini adults. So that's really exciting. We're unsure what happened to the other ones. Unfortunately, we don't know what happened to them. But if they happen to occur at a different recovery unit location, we'll be sure to know. So what can you do to help protect snowy plovers? So what can you do to help in the recovery? Because who doesn't want to save that little cute face? So what can you do to help protect snowy plovers? One of the main things is keep out of restricted bird nesting areas. If you see signage to say, hey, plover habitat, respect that. Don't go into it, because even though you can't see plovers, they are there, And then, I have a dog myself, but I think it's really important to keep your dogs on a leash, especially if you're visiting the beach. You think, Fido is cute and fluffy, but anything to a plover is going to look like a predator. It's going to see it as a danger to it. Especially if you're walking, jogging, or you have a horse, make sure you're not, going into areas that have kelp and kind of debris, because that's where plovers and little chicks could be hiding. Make sure you're walking along the rec line, so kind of below the high tide watermark, just to avoid going and trampling any nests, because you can't do that. If you're there using beaches as recreation, make sure you dispose of your garbage. That's one of the things, is that garbage left behind is going to attract predators, and predators, they're opportunistic. They're going to have a free meal, but at the same time, they might go after a plover. If there's kelp and driftwood on the beach, leave it be. As I said, they rely on that for foraging, and at the same time, there might be a chick hiding there because they're just going to try and hide from anything that they see as danger. And then, one of the things that this year, especially with COVID, is that a lot of people are enjoying recreation outdoors, which is fantastic. They're getting to know different parks in where they live, but at the same time, it's one of those interesting things that the surge of people going outdoors has kind of had this interesting effect for plovers in particular. So what's going on? So one of the things that we've seen specifically in one of our main areas, Eden Landing, is that while it's open to the public for walking and jogging and stuff like that, there's areas that are strictly marked as plover habitat. There's gates, there's signage that say, hey, do not enter. And because we've seen people trespassing a lot more, at the same time, we've seen a lot more trash. We've seen people just leaving masks and things, and they're just not really being considerate. And at the same time, that's causing problems for us for predation. And the reason why we know this is happening is that along our ponds, that we actually, to keep track of nests and how they're hatching, is that we leave camera traps out there just to kind of make sure that we know what's going on with plovers. And we've actually caught people riding bikes on the pond bottom, people walking in areas they're not supposed to. And one of the effects that we've been seeing is that where we've been seeing people trespassing, we've been seeing high instances of abandonment of nests. And that's just one of the things that we don't want. We want our plovers to succeed, and we need the public to really respect areas that are closed off for plovers. I know people want to walk, but there's other areas that people can go into. So where can you see plovers? So as I mentioned, Western snowy plovers can be seen throughout the entirety of California's coastal range. But if you want some more specifics, beaches along San Mateo, Marin, Santa Cruz, Monterey County, Tunitas Creek, for example, Stevens Creek Shoreline Natural Study Area, Alviso Marin County Park, Don Edwards, Eden Land Ecological Reserve, Ravenswood, Hayward Shoreline. So these are all parks that you can go to, here in the Bay Area, Eden Landing. Yeah, you can come see plovers anywhere. Plovers might be there. You just got to be really good about seeing them. And again, many more areas. So plovers in Tunitas Creek. So snowy plovers have historically been known to nest on the beach, even though they're not really quite sure how they're doing right now. But the one thing is that what's great is that the project is actually implementing features that are actually going to protect environmentally sensitive habitat for plovers. So that's really exciting that they're kind of allowing people to enjoy the beach, but at the same time having a passive recreation, so that people can still enjoy it, but at the same time, it's not going to directly impact plovers nesting there. Then the last time plovers were observed for the project was January and February 2018. And one exciting thing that we know of, that there is an SFBBO and Tunitas Creek connection, is that a bird that was banded by Point Blue in Monterey is known to have is actually breeding in Eden Landing Ecological Reserve in one of the ponds called E14, and they actually nested there this year. And one of the cool things is it actually was seen wintering in Tunitas Creek Beach, and it's banded, so we were able to keep track exactly of all that vital information. And the color combo is yellow, aqua, aqua, yellow. So that's really cool that we actually have a bird that is using all different kinds of habitats here in California. So that's really exciting. So hopefully, I hope to see plovers in Tunitas Creek once it's open to the public. And then I kind of want to talk to you guys and share something with you guys that's pretty cool. This year, I actually, during a survey in May 4th, I actually found an injured plover, which I've never seen before. Typically, if you find an injured bird, they really don't last long because they're easy targets for predators. So I saw this bird during my survey, and I could clearly see that it had like a very droopy wing. And at that point, I knew that I needed to do something about it, because as someone that's aiding in their recovery, I needed to do something. So yeah, I saw this little guy, and it was just so sad. And then so I was able to safely capture. I actually named him Charlie. I made that connection. He just seemed like a Charlie to me. So I was able to safely capture him, put him in a box to kind of keep him kind of calm. And then from there, I transferred him to the International Bird Rescue. And from there, they were able to work their magic in order to help Charlie. And what they found out was that he suffered a very bad wing fracture. His humerus bone was actually broken in 3 pieces, so as you can see. And then he also had a lacerated, oh God, I can't see it, patagium. So it's like kind of like the web of skin that connects the shoulder to the wing. So you can kind of see how he's doing. And then they had to do is put a surgical pin and place it to allow the fracture to heal and hopefully have the wing heal as well. So they did an awesome job taking care of Charlie. So you kind of want to know what happened to Charlie. So where is Charlie now? So unfortunately, Charlie was not able to regain a normal wing function to actually properly fly and survive in the wild. But there's a happy ending to this, and I'm going to show you. He lives at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So you can kind of see Charlie hanging out over here. He's hanging out with his buddies. He's very happy with all his shorebird friends. And yeah, he's been living there. And you can, even though the Monterey Bay Aquarium is closed at the moment, you can check him out at their aviary aquarium. So look how handsome Charlie is. And thank you to Monterey Bay Aquarium for sending this video to show how Charlie is doing. We really appreciate it. I miss him. I'm so glad that he's doing well. And I'm excited to actually see him in the future. Yeah, look at him. And then, what happened? And yeah, after that, thank you so much. And I hope you love plovers as much as I do. And one little tidbit, I have a picture here. This is called the SF Bay Bird. And he, as you can see, he has a color combos of both giants and the A's. So that's kind of our little plover sports bird. but thank you so much for tuning in.
That was amazing, Jessica. Thank you. Your enthusiasm is so like clear and infectious and stuff. I really appreciate that you're so dedicated to this and that you took the time to share with all of us. A lot of folks are thankful and enjoying in chat, and I was surprised to find out it's only so few birds that are here in the Bay Area. What was it, like 500 or something?
Yeah, it's less than that. It's like 200. Yeah, the goal is 500, but at the same time, it's hard to keep track of birds unless they're strictly banded. So
yeah, that's wild. So we have some time for questions right now. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to take a moment to type them out and post them in chat. And while folks are doing that, I wanted to share a little bit more about Tunitas Creek Beach and the work that's going on there. So we're going to show you a diagram here of the most recent iteration of the plans that are being developed for Tunitas Creek Beach by San Mateo County Parks with support from Peninsula Open Space Trust. And there's been a whole process going on from late summer through the fall to conduct some surveys and gather community input and engage different people to start making plans for developing amenities at Tunitas Creek Beach. So again, this is the most recent iteration of the plan. And in this picture, you could see, a nice large area for the public to park up next to Highway 1, a pedestrian pathway, and some other features like a trail, some amount of ADA access to help folks with more limited mobility access certain parts of this beach. But then you could see on the bottom left there a large area that's tentatively designated as Snowy Plover habitat. And so there's an effort to reconcile these needs of public access and wildlife protection and habitat restoration. So great planning underway to figure that out. And like Jessica said, this is one of the difficult parts about managing our public open spaces is these different needs. Of course, folks should enjoy this beautiful beach. It was protected by post, transferred to San Mateo County Parks for the benefit of all people in the region. But then how do we protect these awesome little birds and other species too? Another issue is erosion from unpermitted trails all along the coast. This is an issue where, folks just cut trails down these steep bluffs and then erosion starts. So figuring out how to control that as well is a big concern. And this next picture we'll show you are just some renderings of what these amenities might look like in the future. Again, these plans are in the works. There's more planning to be done. And you could see that URL at the bottom of the picture, parks.smcgov.org/Tunitas Creek Beach Improvement Project. You could learn all about the project there. And our colleague at Post, Taylor Yang, has been supporting. You heard from him a few weeks ago on another program about the Bay Area Ridge Trail. And of course, lots of wonderful people at San Mateo County Parks and consultants and all the people providing community input. Yeah, and what was that bird's name?
Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie. And then we had E14 visiting.
Yes, he doesn't have a name yet. I don't know if you want to name him.
maybe that's something that we got to do.
Right.
All right, so let's take some audience questions here. One question that came up, putting you on the spot to be a general bird expert here, but are there any other species, like if somebody's trying to identify if something's a snowy plover, are there any common birds that you might confuse with the snowy plover? Or are they pretty distinct? Like there's no lookalikes out there?
There actually are visiting plovers, our cousins that come through along the, when they start their migration. It's like, there's the semi-palmated plover, there's killdeer, even though they're a little bit bigger, but there's other plovers that actually look alike. And then also they kind of like to mingle with sandpipers a lot. So they kind of hide in those foraging flocks. So they might just blend in. And honestly, you can probably only see a plover once it moves. Other than that, they're really hard to see. But yeah, they're there. They might be like one out of like thousands of sandpipers, but they're there.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. So you can look at a flock of sandpipers and maybe like try to pick out one that looks a bit different. That's cool. Yeah, you were mentioning how here in the Bay Area, a really urbanized area, there's so many impacts from predators and other human impacts. Um, One of our viewers was asking, are there any comparison studies that you know of other areas where there's not so much human impact and they're just doing way better? Or maybe,
Honestly, at this point, I think at one point salt ponds kind of was that like the special circumstance where there wasn't a lot of human impacts, but because
mm,
recently a lot of these pond areas are actually slowly started to be opening up to public recreation. Now we're kind of seeing how the human disturbance, the element is actually affecting them. So unfortunately, maybe there might be that like golden beach somewhere along the coast that, humans are in there, but at the same time, there's biologists have a lot of work to do, and it's so hard to actually keep track of all of the plovers. But yeah, it's just one of those things that, unfortunately, we're all just going to have to live with coexisting with plovers and just being aware that we need to share habitat that they consider home.
totally. And yeah, another person asked, uh, this is why we see some areas blocked off, nesting areas to keep people out. And, the answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
What are can we name any of these areas where like there's designated snowy plover habitat that you might notice, like if you're out at the beach?
Yeah, so a lot of the kind of the closing off, the exclusion fence, they kind of put it up during the breeding season. Sometimes they leave it year round, but most likely during the breeding season. Like for example, Fort Ord, a beach in like Monterey, they actually
Mm.
have these like kind of like posts with string that pretty much tell you don't go in here kind of thing. And I think typically as a rule of thumb, if anything looks like could be plover habitat, just be wary when you walk. You may not see chicks. Chicks are really hard to see. Like sometimes I'm out trying to find chicks that had just hatched, and I have to tippy toe to where they're at because you don't know where they're hiding. They're so hard to find. But yeah, just listen to the rules. I know not every park has these signs, but at the same time, it's always good just to know like they could be out there. There could be a nest, and you just need to be aware of that.
Great. And I don't imagine we have the answer right off the top of our head, but Hollis was asking if there's a place we could find that color chart so we know where they.
I know we carry that around, but I'm sure I can see if SBBO can post it. But I'm sure if you just look up plover color combinations, it'll pop up.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
I can try and make that available to people, like maybe SFBBO's website. So yeah, you guys know what the colors are.
Great. Last question. Are the bands, they're not encoded with microchips, are they?
No, they're not.
That'd
They're
be fancy.
not. But they're now there's actually people that are actually starting to put like GPS location devices on them, like a little backpack to actually start tracking them. I know technology is kind of getting a little bit more impressive. It is expensive, but I know that there are some organizations throughout the recovery units that are actually starting to see where plovers are going. But their actual bands don't have microchips. No, we're not trying to stop them that much.
Well, little snowy plover backpacks would be very cute, in my opinion. So something to look into. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for your time. I enjoyed this so much. I know everybody watching enjoyed it a lot too. And I'm going to mention a couple of things here. One, we just posted a link to a survey. So for all of you who are watching, we would love for you to take this quick event survey so we could find out a little bit more about your experience and if you enjoyed the event, how we could improve. And then next, we want to mention San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory website, sfbbo.org. Again, SFBBO is a nonprofit. Consider donating to SFBBO. And you all have a wonderful online event series that you all host, the Birdie Hour.
Yes. Yeah, we have. I think link also came up. But yeah, we will be having those coming up in 2021. So look out for that, and then other events that we'll be hosting throughout the year.
Awesome. So definitely check out sfbbo.org. And then I'll also mention that this is the last event that we're hosting at Post for the year, the last online event we'll be hosting. But we have a great program of events coming up already in 2021, starting with the Wallace Stegner Lectures, where we're hosting a whole bunch of amazing leaders and authors on a series of talks in the early part of the year. So you can check that out. Again, thank you to all of our donors as well as to the donors to SFBBO. Y'all are the reason we can do this work. Also volunteers. So thank you all very much. And Jessica, I hope you get to relax a little bit before you go back out there and help take care of these plovers. Thanks so much for what you do.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good weekend, everybody. See you soon.